Hey folks, let's talk about some of my favorite or least favorite rabbit myths. If you're getting into rabbit farming, or you were thinking about getting into rabbit farming, I'll tell you this now, they are fantastic. I love doing it. It's one of those things, it is great. The meat, I raise for meat personally. It's one of those things, I do my best to be self-sufficient as best as I can be. Rabbits are good because in the spring and summer and fall months, you don't really need money in order to take care of them. You gotta be able to source them water, and that's only kind of. They can pull a lot of their moisture out of what they eat, just as long as they're not eating dried foods. If they're eating fresh grass, they're eating fresh vegetables, they get a lot of water retention out of those, and you might not even need them. So rabbits can be a super simple, super easy thing to take care of. And I'm not saying don't give them water. I'm not saying that at all. 100% give them water. They will do better if you provide them the best life you can. And not only does that make you feel better as a grower, but that also yields the best results. You give them the most balanced or the most variety in the diet you can. You give them good, clean drinking water on a regular basis. Clean their pens on a regular basis. And they produce for you. But that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is I wanted to talk about some of the things that most people don't want to talk about. If you want to do rabbits, you gotta have a pretty strong moral compass. I'm telling you this now, they're cute, they're fluffy, they're adorable. Your kids will love them. If you want to eat them, you gotta come to terms with either somebody killing it or you killing it. It's easy to eat an animal if you're not the one processing it. We all know that because we've all bought meat at the grocery store and you don't think twice about it. But I'm telling you this, everything tastes better when you're proud of the fact that you grew it. Everything tastes better when you're proud of the fact you grew it. You produced it, you have the pride in that, and to somebody on the outside who might buy it as dog food or whatever, they might not enjoy it as much as you do, but to you and to your family, you will really enjoy it. I like rabbit because it's like everything you wish chicken was, minus the fact you don't end up with, well, it's like you get 4 sets of drums and thighs, or you get 4 drums and thighs, and then you get two breasts basically, the back straps. I don't butcher for an entire person, but this is what we're talking about here. You gotta come to grips with putting these things in the fridge. If that's what you're doing. If you want to raise them to sell them off as pets, groovy, do it. Fantastic. Then there's one less hurdle you got to jump through. But if you're doing it for pelts, if you're doing it for the food, you got to come to terms with it. I thought it was going to be like chickens, and I did that instead of chickens. And now at the end of the year, now in 2024, it's October, I've now come to the conclusion I'm having chickens anyways. It's not the same thing. One doesn't quite replace the other. Rabbit is way better. It's way richer. But chickens seem to be, I don't know. It's one of those things like you don't think about it as much. You butcher a chicken. They're super inexpensive. They're super inexpensive to feed. And yeah, you can get attached to personalities, but not like a rabbit. Not like a rabbit. The other thing, if you want to breed them, this one is the part I have troubles with. The rate of success is so much lower than what I thought. You can talk to some producers that get a really good success rate. My success rate this year has been absolutely horrible. We had a hot snap early. I wasn't prepared for it. And the worst part was is I saw the heat coming 2 days before it actually came, and I was actually prepping for it. But when that heat hit, I lost 6 litters, and I lost I think 8 parent animals. There's nothing you can do about it. It just happens, and it sucks. Just that on its own, that sucked. And that's something, like, at the time I didn't have any way to rectify it. Now, looking forward, I'm just going to be prepared well in advance. I didn't know before I got into rabbits. Boys, the bucks, go sterile in the heat. Yeah, and it takes a long time for them to get back to the point where they're going to start producing, where they're going to start taking. I gave my boys probably 3 to 4 weeks after the heat snap, the hot snap, and I still, none of the girls caught. And my breeding program, I put them in the first day, they go in, they spend 20 to 30 minutes with each other. If they aren't ovulating by the end of that, they'll be ovulating the next day. Unless they're stressed out and they aren't going to ovulate. But you're not going to know that until 4 weeks later. But that's the nature of it, what it is, I guess. So 4 weeks later, none of my bucks, all 5 of them, none of them were catching. Given there might be something there as well. I don't know if does also go in fertile in the heat, and I also don't know if they just won't go into estrus because it's hot. I know they won't if they're stressed out. I know they won't if they've got a high parasite load. I know that they won't if they're in a really crowded space. So if you got 7 or 8 rabbits in a small space, they won't drop an egg. They don't need to. Nature would say, you don't need to reproduce. There's lots of us. But that's something that sucked, was breeding them not as successful as I thought it was going to be. That whole phrase, breeds like rabbits, just means humps a lot. Doesn't actually mean you put out babies. And so that's the other thing. So yeah, the baby production is kind of short and lacking of what I wanted, or what I was expecting. So by the end of the season, I ended up with, and this is the other thing too, you don't know who's got good genetics and bad genetics until you're there. And this is my first year doing it, but I started in January. That's when I bought my first rabbits. And now here I am in October, and I can sit here and tell you from the spring, I had more success late spring than I did any other point in time. I had probably 3 babies from each litter that took and kept. And worst part was just getting into it. Everyone thinks that they're cute, and a bunch of them were given away as pets to family and friends. I thought I was off. I was hitting a home run. So when I did my next breeding, I didn't know that it wasn't going to have as much success, and then it just didn't. Don't know why I just flipped that around. I thought the screen went dim. That's probably that auto darkening feature thing that I'd never fucking turn on or off. But anyways, it's one of those things. The breeding is hard. If you're not ready to see and dispose of passed away baby bunnies, don't do it. Because even me, it was hard the first few times. And it's one of those things, like, I don't mind death. I'm not afraid to see it. I'm not afraid to put something in my fridge. But everything has to, like, death has to have a meaning or a purpose behind it. And unfortunately, when it doesn't, it really bothers me. And maybe that's just me, but I don't think that's a bad thing. That being said, if you want to breed some rabbits, you kind of have to have a strong stomach. You have to be able to live with the fact that, and it's not, genuinely, it's only really difficult the first few times, and after that, you just kind of go, oh, man. But even like some of these professional growers in my area, I saw someone posting, because there's one person in my area that's actually trying to conduct a study, right? Trying to get everything nailed down, because they've been a successful producer almost all their life. And they're saying that their success rate is about 67%. They had it nailed down to such an odd number, right? And I'm over here like, my God, that explains so much. Now at least I don't feel so bad about it. It still sucks because there's still a lot of loss of life and a lot of stress on the bucks. But all in all, I would sit there and I would say it's still worth doing. Because every time you, there's another one. Here's one that I didn't realize was going to be an issue. I didn't realize it was going to be an issue at all. I thought it was going to be fairly turnkey and go. When it came to the breeding, I was surprised by the success of the kids once they're born. That surprised the heck out of me. But the other part that surprised me was how hard it is to actually find good mums. I've had to call more than 50% of my mums, and I give them 3 or 4 chances. And I ended up calling more than 50% of my mums because they either they weren't nesting right, so they wouldn't pull hair and then the babies would freeze to death. They wouldn't give birth in the nesting boxes. They just refused to for whatever reason. They would just go in there and use it as a bathroom, and then they would go and they'd give birth on the grates. And babies would have their legs sticking out, get caught, they couldn't move, and then they would just freeze to death. And I had one mum that would literally give birth all over her entire enclosure. Like, there would just be babies everywhere. And the nesting box would be full, and you can clean it as much as you want, but it seems like as soon as they start doing it, they won't stop. It seems that way. I'm sure you could probably work with the animal and get it better, but in my circumstance, I give everyone 3 or 4 tries, and the more expensive the rabbit is, of course, I give it more tries, because it's one of those things like they have to reproduce. If you pay $40 on a rabbit, it has to produce offspring. If you pay $20 on a rabbit, you can eat it, you feel fairly guilt-free. And $20 and under, I would feel guilt-free about it. Why? Because the price of a full chicken starts getting close to that. And that's what I base everything off of, is the replacement of that animal in the grocery store. And unfortunately, we don't have mass-produced rabbit out here. But I know either A, I can go hunting and get a tag for rabbit, or I could go and buy a chicken at the grocery store and produce the food that way, or have the food that way. For me, I like the production, I'm proud of the production, and I like doing it that way. But if you spend $40 or $50 on a rabbit, and I've actually got one here I spent $80 on, and it's because I kind of wanted to start up a Rex program. Rexes are finicky, and that's the other thing too. Like, there's not all breeds the same. But I will say this, all of my crossbreeds, and it doesn't matter what the crossbreed is, if it's not a purebred something, they seem to just have, like, there's so much hardier. Like, my best animals are New Zealand Rex crosses. They grow super fast. They don't produce, like, a super nice fur. It's not bad. Like, it's soft. It's a bunny. It's soft. But they're not as finicky as a purebred Rex. They get so much bigger than both the New Zealands and the Rexes. Like, a New Zealand Rex is a fantastic cross, and I would keep a purebred parent of either, knowing I was going to breed them, or get something that's already crossed and breed them. Like, there's so many, like, when you get into hybrid vigor, it is a real thing. It is a wildly real thing, and it's like, it's not even comparable to what a purebred puts out. I got purebred New Zealands that don't grow nearly as fast or as large as what the New Zealand Rex. I'm on a gravel road, and you probably just got a whole lot of I don't know what. How do I close this again? Ooh, don't mind me. There we go. Better. Now hopefully you stay on. But anyway, the point I'm getting at is there's a few things I didn't realize getting into it. And when it comes down to the butchering rabbits, I'll probably post a video of it at some point here. I've got a large amount that I've got to do. And I'll do a video on some other animals that I'm keeping as well. But there's a few different ways to skin a rabbit. And as far as I'm concerned, my favorite way, I don't do a full carcass. I take the cuts of meat that I want, and if I want to keep a rib kit, like the bones and stuff like that for soup, which, let's be honest, you do 1 or 2 animals, and that's fine. That's more than fine. But it's one of those things, like, you just take the back straps off, and you take the front legs and the hind legs, and you're there. Then you just throw the rest in the garbage pile, right? And if you keep the pelts, it's simple enough to do. I do like keeping the pelts. I live out on the reserve, and it's one of those things, like, I like to donate them, like, to the indigenous like the indigenous kids out here. They learn how to tan, they learn how to stretch. They learn how to do this stuff. I don't even know how to do it. I'm the one producing the damn things. But I don't have a teacher, and I don't have anyone out here that seems like they're willing to teach me anyways. I'm sure maybe if I could reach out, I could find out. But yeah, there's a few things I didn't realize were going to be an issue with rabbits. And it's one of those things you don't realize until you're there. You can do all the research you want, you look for all the things you want, but there's certain things you don't realize. First thing, rabbits really don't do well in heat. Like, horrible in heat. So there's certain things like doing them in a colony. If you got bare dirt that they can burrow into, fantastic. They'll do good in both summer and winter, right? They get the heat from the earth in the winter. They also get the cooliness of the earth in the summer. Oh my God, this road is bumpy. Do a lot of maintenance to your vehicles living on a gravel road. But yeah, it's one of those things. So like, there's certain things as well. Like, I do mine all in cages, and coming into this next winter here, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to go about this. I'm contemplating the idea of taking the legs off the cages and taking the grating off the bottoms and letting them burrow or deal with the ground. But the other side too is then their manure and everything is going to build up. I'm going to have to clean it out by hand. Not the worst thing in the world, but definitely not as efficient as I'd like. But as far as rabbits go, they're fantastic. I do genuinely like doing it. Curveballs, yes, but that's like everything else. And I did so much research before I got into it, and you don't even know what to look for when you don't know, right? And that's it. If you don't know, you don't know. You find out when you find out. But yeah, heat, that's a big one. I didn't realize it was as bad as it is. It is bad. You need to be able to shield your rabbits from the heat. At least shield them from it. I'm not even talking about cooling them off. I'm saying shield them from getting hot in the first place. That's your best thing. Because then once the rabbits get heat stroke, it's so hard for them to recover. But like I said, a few curveballs. The heat is a huge issue for rabbits. Kits will overheat and they'll pass on. And it's wild because they don't have fur. And even a mum doesn't pull hair. They just overheat and pass on. But so that's one of them. The heat's a big issue. The males go sterile, and it takes a while for them to gain back, like get to the point where they're going to be fertile again. The other one is hard to find good mums. It seems like it's fairly hard to find good mums, and I got to a point now where I've got a few really good mums, and that's it. I'm going to keep on going with their genetics, and hopefully their offspring learn from them, and I can keep on going with those offspring. The problem is, if you start keeping your offspring from breeding, you got to find different bucks. For the most part, the bucks seem like they're all good. I've had one buck that was kind of rapey. I put him in with a bigger female once. Ever since, he's been fine. He was so hard on all my other does. It was like he would grab their fur. I had one that actually had a chunk of her ear bitten off because he was grabbing onto her ear to get onto her. And yeah, then I put it was a really poor example of a Rex, and I just kept him because I like him. I just like him because he's a cuddly rabbit, but he was so bad with the mating. And I put a full-grown Flemish Giant in with him. And if you know things about rabbits, Rexes are not a huge rabbit. They can be a meat breed. They usually produce out in that 6-8 pound mark, which is good. I do my harvest at 6 pounds. So if I got a bunch of them, I wait until my smallest one gets to 5 pounds, and everything bigger than that is a bonus. And it usually ends up being your runt gets to 5 pounds and everyone else is 6 or 7, which is good. It's a good process. Everyone gets raised together. You can keep track of each litter as they grow. But yeah, it's one of those things. Finding good mums is hard, and you don't know until you're doing it. It's so hard to find the good traits, and if you've got a good mum in the rabbit world, chances are better than not you're not going to sell her unless you're getting completely out of rabbits, and that's something to be aware of as well. If you're going to buy a mum from a rabbit producer, make sure she's proven, and it's one of those things, if she's proven, she's got to be good, and there's got to be a good reason why they're getting rid of her, because it's like I said, good mums are hard to come by. If you find someone who's getting rid of a mature female rabbit that's had a litter, but there's just a one-off, they're just getting rid of her, and they don't really give you much of a reason. They're just, oh, we're just downsizing. And downsizing is what we all say. But large-scale producers, or larger-scale producers, or even hobby farmers, like I house over 30 rabbits. And it's not a big burden. It's good. It's good. Like, it is really good. And now coming into winter, I'm going to get that down to probably 12 rabbits in total. That's probably what I'm going to get down. So I'm going to pack away a bunch in the freezer. And that's the other thing too. Another one I didn't realize, they do take a little longer to grow than I thought. I thought it was going to be like broiler chickens where it's like 8 weeks, 12 weeks. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't. You get the off ones that are like super fast growing, and I had probably 5 or 6 that were like butcher weight at harvest weight in literally 8 weeks. But for the most part, the majority of all the rabbits I had that I produced here, they don't get that big that fast. But yeah, that's it. I mean, I think that's basically everything I thought about. I mean, there's certain things. There'll be people who say you need to feed a pellet. I'm going to tell you this now. You don't need to feed a pellet. It's good if you do. It is really good if you do. You can feed only a pellet. I wouldn't do just one type of hay. Do a nice mix of hays. Throw some vegetables in there. That's a good balanced diet. Or you can do just straight pellets, or you can do the mix, which is what I do. I do as many things as I can that they can eat at a time, and that works great. You'll even have chunky rabbits. Like, you go and you harvest a rabbit, they've actually got a little bit of meat on them, or a little bit of fat on them, and it's kind of cool, nifty. But alfalfa pellets, or your rabbit growing pellets, the 16, 17, 18 percenters, it's like 98% alfalfa, and the rest is crude protein. The higher the percentage, the less percentage of alfalfa, and I think it was 18% is 96% alfalfa. It's a lot. So it's one of those things that people sit there and be like, you can't just feed them hay. Meanwhile, people will be like, you have to feed them a pellet diet. Meanwhile, you're literally feeding them. You're literally feeding them 96% alfalfa. No ifs, ands, or buts. And like, that's if you're doing a high protein diet. And you can literally supplement the rest with, like, a good fat is actually lettuces. Don't do head lettuce. Head lettuce is toxic for rabbits. Don't do head lettuce. Leaf lettuce is high in carbohydrates and fat. Most people don't think about that. For a vegetable, no matter what, for a vegetable they're high, but in general they're not. But all rabbits eat their vegetables, so like for them, that's like their Big Mac. Minus the fact it's probably not as good tasting. Their Big Mac is things like higher sugars. So if you're getting close to finishing, start introducing a little bit of fruit into their diet. You'll start putting the sugar it turns into an acid in the actual meat itself. It's called I think it was a salicylic acid. I think that's what it was. Salicylic, I think. I'm not 100% on that, but it creates an acid in the meat, and actually if you dry age, that's what tenderizes meat, and dry aging is that acid, and that's created by having sugar in the animal. So in the bloodstream, in the muscles, like having a high sugar content in the animal creates more of this acid, and then when it breaks down the fibers of the meat. And it's not even actually the fibers of the meat, it's actually it's like sinew. It's the piece, it's like the membrane that actually connects everything together, and it makes it actually what's tough, and it breaks it down. So like, if you want a dry age rabbit, you could. I don't think there's much of a reason to. That's the other one too. So like, what do you do to make sure your rabbit's tender? I brine. I do usually a 2-day brine. Once I'm done doing my harvest, I give everything a good rinse. I do a bowl, probably 4 liters of water and probably 4 tablespoons of salt. Throw it in there, and then when I'm done brining after like 2 days, and it's not an exact science, you'll be fine with 1 day if you wanted, just as long as you're not going straight from harvest, rinse, freezer. And going straight to the freezer does such a it's not good. The other thing you can do is you can actually let it oxidize naturally in a bag of air. So you take your bag, you put your meat inside of it, and you just make sure when you ziplock it closed, there's a bunch of air in it. You just toss it around. You just mix it around, and then you just want to move it around every once in a while. Like if you go in there and you're looking for a snack, you're grabbing salad dressing with meat, just take it and just give her a little bit and put it back. And all you're doing is you're just looking to oxidize, which is what the dry age process does, and you're just making the meat more tender. It's one of those things like I didn't realize that was an issue until I started doing it. And like the first rabbits I did were fantastic. They were so tender, and it's literally because I harvested them and ate them an hour and a half after harvest, right? So this like it was good. It was like really good. But like I said, there's a few issues I didn't realize were issues going into rabbits. And like I said, I can sit here and make I could probably go on here for another half an hour talking about all the negative sides of rabbits. You gotta deal with poop. You gotta buy feed. Oh my God. But they're super simple. Rabbits are a super simple animal. And unfortunately, it's one of those things, we don't really think about it much. But animals that are on the bottom of the food chain, generally speaking, have a high mortality rate. I mean, there are certain animals that seem like they're just fantastic. You look at chickens. Like, chickens are fantastic. You leave a broody hen to do her thing, and next thing you know, you've doubled the size of your flock. And you're just like, oh, what? I didn't even know. Springtime comes around, and you just got a bunch of little yellow floofs running around, but they get preyed on really quickly. I've seen magpies take chicks. It's what it is. But it's what... As a producer, we generally raise things that are not on the top of the food chain because we are the top of the food chain. And we just gotta realize, like, these animals do have a high mortality rate, and that's why one mom produces babies in 4 weeks, and they can be anywhere from a litter of literally 1 to, I think the highest I've had is 13. It's wild. The larger the rabbit, usually the less babies they put out. And they're usually large babies. I'm saying usually. It happens every once in a while where they put out a bunch of small babies. But my Flemish Giant, she routinely will put out 4, 5 babies, and they're gigantic. You just go, oh my God, you must be sore. But they're big babies. Big girl, big babies. But anyways, I think this is where I'm going to end off this video. Like I said, a few key points in there. Heat, huge issue. Way bigger than I ever thought. Way more than cold is. Number 2, feed, do your research. If you're looking at it, you want to know why you got to feed something, do a little digging. I looked a little further, found out what alfalfa pellets are made out of. Or what rabbit growing pellets are made out of. It's 96 to 98% alfalfa. So it's like, okay, cool. We're feeding them alfalfa in a different form, right? So there's heat, there's feed. The feed isn't really a problem. It's like I said, it's just one of those points. Just do a little thinking on it when you want to feed them and find what works for you. But the heat's a problem, mums are a problem, kid mortality is a problem, and then buck sterility. And then there's so many things on there as well. People think, people will talk about it and they'll try and figure things out. But it seems like everyone has something to say, including myself. And we're all right, but we're all wrong. And we all find our own way to do it. If it was an exact science, everyone would do it the same. Everyone would do it the same way. But the key point is, you have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy it. If you're doing it and you hate it, there's no point in doing it. Because when it really boils down to it at the end, you look at the cost of doing all these things, and you're not saving any money. But there's a large difference between spending $20 on a bag of feed every once in a blue moon to feed a dozen or so rabbits versus just buying a singular chicken every once in a blue moon. It's like you're making small incremental payments on a larger thing, right? And that's what we all do. Not all of us. I don't buy brand new vehicles. I drive these old things, and every once in a while I gotta sink a couple $100 into them to repair something, or I gotta sink $1,000 into it every once in a while to repair something major. But man, I'll tell you what, not having a bi-weekly payment of a few $100 a month is fantastic. And it's the same thing with these. Instead of going out to the grocery store, you spend fucking $70-$80 on your meats every week. And that's if that's what you're spending. Some people spend more, some people spend less. I didn't eat so much beef until I produced it myself. And it's because instead of spending $60 every week on beef, or $60 to have 2 meals of beef, right? You can do that for one meal if you really wanted to, but now it turned into I spend $300 every 3 months to feed it, or not even that, $200. And then at the end of the year, guess what? You got so much food. But anyways, that's the end of the rant. We're ending the video here. If you want, scroll back through the video, find the other problems. I'm not gonna tell you to like or subscribe. I don't know how this stuff works, but I'm here putting information out because I would think I would have appreciated it if I scrolled past it. Anyways, y'all have a good day. I hope you really consider the rabbits if you don't already have them. But like I said, I think it's worth doing, even with the problems they come with. And do your best. Make sure you're happy with it. Everyone have a good day.